40, 43, 44. So you got me. Luke 6, 43, 44. Pops, if you could get 1 Kings 18, 21. Johnny, if you could get Revelations 3:16. And then, Tania, if you can read Luke 11, 23. Belinda, Matthew 7, 20. Then Nathan, if you could get Joshua 7, 20 to 21. Nara, can you get 1 Corinthians 10, 12? And we'll stop right there. Praise God. And so we've probably heard this story before, but in January 13th, 1982, Flight 90, Florida Flight 90, had taken off in a blizzard and had crashed in the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Had 79 people on board, and 74 of them died. And in this story, what is taking place as this plane had crashed, had gone into the river, many people almost instantly died on impact. A lot of people died from just freezing, that they weren't able to come to the surface, the water's icy, everything that had taken place. But the very few who were still in the water needed to be rescued. And the story goes that a man who was just traveling by, his name was Lenny Skudnick, he was just traveling by, he saw the whole thing take place, and 30 feet away was a woman in the river, and she is drowning, she is dying. You got to understand that this river is freezing cold. He is not really a swimmer. He said, he puts it in the article, there is tons of bystanders all around, but he made eye contact with this girl. He looked around and he noticed that no one was doing anything. And he says, well, you know what? I'm going to. And so, risking his own life, he went, took off his clothes, he jumped in the water, he grabbed her, and he brought her back to shore. And so she was one of the very few 4 or 5 people who survived. And so going through this, he said in the article, what was the reason why you did this? And he said, because nobody else did. And so how moving that is many times this is what's very necessary when it comes to us in the church. When nobody else is, we need to. Because there is plenty of people who are dying in their sin right now, and that we need to rescue them by the grace of God in this place. And so I want to look at rising to the occasion, Numbers 25, 7 to 8. So here we have in the story, we know it was taking a place, the children of Israel, they parked themselves in Acacia Grove, they fell into fornication and idolatry, and by doing so, we see that there is an eruption of a plague that killed 24,000 people. God is addressing them. They're at the door of the tabernacle, and God is speaking to them. This is what I want to have done. I need everyone who has sins, I need you guys to pretty much lob off their heads, their leaders. And you guys need to kill them and stop this plague. This is what I'm asking to have done. And so in this, as they're talking, pastor's having the sermon, he's talking on sin, and all of a sudden you see the sin take place right in front of your eyes. Phineas had probably just about enough of this, and he said, this is it. And he goes out and he kills them. But thinking about this in this text is, how many know we know people by their fruits, right? The Bible is very specific in this. And so here Phineas' action spoke louder than words. Luke 6:43-44. How many know that we can't be a people who are sitting on the fence, right? We have, listen, if Lenny Skudnick, if he didn't do anything, then all these people would just have made eye contact with this lady as she was going down, right? That would have been the end of her life. Okay, listen, there is a lot of people in Santa Rosa that we make eye contact with, right? That we're watching, but we need to do something about that, right? Do something about maybe the lives that they're living in, the sin that we need to be able to bring. Listen, we will do no good to anybody by sitting on the fence, right? It's very popular to be a non-committed person, okay? Just to be the bystander, right? And so the world really wants to have heroes, right? Really, I mean, heroes they're great stories, but nobody wants to be the hero, right? Because it's going to be sacrifice, right? It wasn't like, I wonder if I should wear my swimsuit today and I can jump in the Potomac River where it's going to be freezing cold, right? That wasn't his mindset, right? He's just like, it's going to be a cold day, and not anywhere in his mind to sacrifice, to do this, right? The world wants to be accepting of all opinions, right? It doesn't want the person to say, no, that's wrong. You can't do that. That's sin, right? We need to, all roads lead to heaven, right? We know that's not true, okay? Here, Elijah, he's challenging the people in 1 Kings 18:21. Right, the Message version says it, how long are you going to sit on the fence? If God is the real God, follow him. If Baal, follow him. Make up your minds. Nobody said a word. Nobody made a move. Right, that is a very harsh thing to say, that we can be those people. Nobody said a word. Nobody made a move. Right, how long are you going to sit on the fence? He's challenging the people. How many know God challenges us to speak up, right? God is telling, hey, listen, you read the Bible, or you're praying, and all of a sudden, maybe something God speaks to you about, or something that you read that, God is encouraging you to share with another, right? And it's right there's something that needs to rise up within us, that God has instilled in us, to go share his word, to go share his message. See, the problem is when we sit on the fence, we're actually choosing not to follow Christ. Okay? When we think of a fence sitter, we think of a wishy-washy people wavering between two opinions, and not someone sold out on something that they should be sold out on. Revelations 3:16. Yeah, there's a great illustration in this place. Because neither you could decide on what to follow, you're lukewarm. You're a fence sitter, right? I will vomit you out of my mouth, right? For to be able to hear these words from God describing us, that could be a very scary and a very sobering thing in this place. Luke 11:23. Okay, the Message version says, this is war. There is no neutral ground. If you're not on my side, you're on the enemy's. If you're not helping, you're making things worse. Right? This is what's happening right now in Acacia Grove. This is what's happening, what Phineas is seeing. right? This is, God has made a specific command. This is, sin must be killed, right? And if you're not killing sin, are you allowing sin to live, right? Phineas recognized that statement. He says, listen, this has to stop. This has to die. And he does something about it. And so by doing so, louder than words was his actions. Because how many know we can talk a good game, right? We could come to church, we could have the tie, we could do all these things. But once those doors open, we've entered into a battlefield, right? And it's a whole different thing. It was always fun growing up. You could tell who had gotten a fight and who had never gotten a fight, right? By, a confrontation with them, right? They'll just sit there and talk, but as soon as you take a step forward, you could see the reaction. Either they're going to step forward or they're going to step back. And you knew right away what was going to end up happening, right? When we started wrestling, the very first thing you could do is when you wrestled and then you got onto the mat, you introduced yourself. Say, 112 pounds, Dominic Tedesco, and then the next guy from blah, 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 and then you go and shake hands. You had to be the most intimidating person you could possibly be. But by handshake, you knew many times whether you could win the match or not. How the person shook your hands. Stop it, I'm going to wrestle you. Hey, you're not, right? Is that you knew. You can tell, right? There has to be something within you that says, listen, I will not allow this to take place. There has to be a fight in you, right? Listen, we used to have a dog named Buddy. Little Jack Russell, he definitely was demon-possessed. But it didn't matter what other dog came to him. Buddy would always stand and want to fight. It was very impressive. It's like, I know a German Shepherd one time came up to him and started messing with Buddy, and Buddy was pretty upset about it. He was trying to fight this German Shepherd to his death, right? It probably just took one little thing and Buddy would have been halfway to the moon. But listen, he was doing everything he possibly could. Listen, this is who I am. I'm going to let you know, right? Listen, many of us, we need to have a little Jack Russell in us, right? We just need to grr our teeth, right? And say, listen, I'm going to make a stand. This is not who you think that I am, a wishy-washy. I'm not a fence-sitter. I'm going to make a stand for Christ in this place, okay? We can't just talk a big game. This was a command that God made to Moses and the leaders. This is what I need you to do. I need you to take action. This is not something where you could have a simple conversation with, right? You need to kill these people. You need to kill. Listen, we can't sit and have a conversation with sin and try to sit there and work it out and negotiate. And listen, if you allow me to do this on the weekends, I'll submit to you on the, we can't, right? Sin has to die. How many could agree with that, right? Any questions or comments to this point? Praise God. Matthew 7:20. Okay, therefore by their fruits you will know them. McGill University says there is truth to this expression, right? How many have ever heard one bad apple could ruin the bunch, right? It's very common. One of the things that we work with in my job in the produce department is that we have to be very diligent of sorting through our produce. Right? We can't just let our produce sit and hope for the best. If there is something that does not look right, or we tell our employees that you would not buy yourself, you need to remove it because it'll destroy something else, right? McGill University says one rotten apple spoils the whole barrel. You bet, because one apple is rotten and has a physical damage, bruises, or any other issue. It produces ethylene, which turn leads to a slightly increased internal temperature, causing a breakdown of the chlorophyll and the synthesis of this pigments. The starch in the fruit, converted to a simple sugar at this time, causes pectin and a component of fiber that cements the cell walls together, beginning a distinguished, therefore, softening of the tissue. Once this happens, it starts a chain reaction to everything else that's around it, and it'll destroy the same as it has destroyed itself, right? And so we know this to be true, right? So we have to sit there at work, and we'll have to open the bag of apples. We'll have to go through and get rid of the bad apples and put back good apples, right? So this is a process. Listen, it's okay when it's like one bag of maybe 10 apples, but when you have a pallet of like 5,000 apples, that's a very tedious job, right? And the problem is, it's not just, I'll just do it on Tuesdays. I got to do it every single day, all the time. Listen, that's what we need to do in our own personal lives, right? We have to sit there and we have to sort through the bad apples, and they need to be removed out of our lives, right? Because what it's going to do is it's going to cause something that's going to not only infect ourselves as being infected, but it's going to infect another brethren, right? There can't be bad apples, right? And so just thinking about this, it's a difficult thing to keep doing this over and over and over, right? I'll let it go for one day, right? And then there's twice as many bad apples. It just never ends. Piles up. How many know that that's life? There's things that are going to come up that need to constantly be moved and fixed in our lives, brought to the altar, right? Because we let it go, it's not only going to manifest and get worse, but it's going to ultimately hurt somebody else, right? Here, the fornication, it was great, right? You're having a good time over here, idolatry and fornication. But you've destroyed 24,000 other people by what you did, right? The Bible is not very specific in this sense and how many people did this, right? It wasn't very specific in how long this all took place, right? It didn't say that, they committed fornication and they woke up and 24,000 were dead. This could have been going on for months, maybe longer, right? And so they're watching their brethren fall and watching others still commit sin. And yet nothing has been done, right? And until God brings this to light, this is what needs to happen. You need to judge sin. And that's what we need to do in our lives many times, is that we need to address something that is hard to address, right? But it needs to be removed so we can be saved, that we can be set free, right? And many times this happens is because we become desanitized, right? Or desensitized. Right? The process of, and I'm going to say this word right one time, and that was desensitized, and it'll be desensitized, it'll be several other words, and so just bear with me. You know what I meant the first time. And so, okay, what this is the process of erosion, okay? And so how many, we go to the beach and we see these rocks and we pick them up and, it's amazing how smooth the ocean has just constantly beat them until the point to where they're at right now, right? But how many know at one point in time, they were probably much bigger than what they were, right? And how many know that there is rocks that were there that are no longer there because they've been just eaten away, okay? So thinking about this process is desensitized. It is an erosion that it really does take place in our hearts. How many know that when we see sin take place all the time, there's something that happens in our lives, right? There is this desensitized, right? And I was thinking about this. I was having a conversation, and how this brought up is that I'm witness to something, and I'm going through, and I'm just, have you looked at a woman with lust? Have you done this? And have you lied? Have you done this? And I was like, man, listen, you could just turn on the news, and you can see half the stuff that we're talking about, right? The fornication, the lying, the stealing, the corruption, and we watch this, right? If you watch a movie, right, there is so much garbage in a single movie, right? But it's like, it's a movie. What's the big deal, right? What's the harm? Well, it's actually causing an erosion on your life. You could be, why we recommend, right, that you don't have a television is because this very thing is because it's desensitizing you and your moral being, right? eroding something, that you're losing a conviction, right? I've played video games before, right? I have shot and killed people in video games before. I have watched people die in video games before, okay? Not a big deal. It's a video game. The first time I ever saw somebody die right in front of me, it was not a video game, right? It was something that was very impactful. Here, I'm doing CPR on somebody, and I see them take their last breath. That was not a video game. That was real life, right? And many times what happens is, in real life, we watch things take place that should not be taking place. And because things are not being done about it, we just let it pass by. The next time, we don't even give it a second glance. And this is where the problem can start to take place. This is why God calls for separation, right? There must be death to sin. Psalms 97:10, let those who love the Lord hate evil. Romans 12:9, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Psalms 34:14, turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. There has to be a separation, right? Those two cannot sin and salvation cannot coexist in your life. Does that make sense to everybody? Any question or any comment? Mom. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Any other thought? Pops? Yeah. 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 Right. When we get saved and give our lives to Christ, right, we become enlisted soldiers, right? Whether you like it or not, you're in God's army now, right? Nathan? Yeah. 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 And that's something was what we're talking about, is that can be something that we can lose, right? Many times is that there can be a false sense of security, okay? And this is important to understand, is that there's maybe this numbness that has taken place. We've seen it over and over, and maybe we've done it over and over, and there's something that has caused this erosion on our hearts, where we're not as sensitive, or it's not as convicting as it once was, right? For me, okay, when you do something wrong, you kind of you just look to the heavens, and it's like, here comes the stinking lightning, man, son of a gun, right? But nothing happens, right? In all honesty, right? Nothing happens. Thank God we don't live in the Old Testament, right? But nothing happens, right? How many know that mentality is the very thing that's so deadly and a false security? It's because nothing happens, right? Many times, and we're so thankful, but God really should reach down, and when we do something, give us the backhand of death. It's like, knock it off, right? But he does not. And we sit there and just, oh, nothing happens. Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe I didn't really do anything wrong, right? And then there's no longer the fear of the lightning strike, right? It's gone. And we just live our lives. We've lost conviction. This erosion has eaten something out of us, and we begin to not fear who God is and his judgment. Why? Because it didn't happen. Because we didn't get caught the way that, we get caught in the flesh, by our parents or by a judge, right? Nothing happens. And so, as we say, is that you could sin in the secret place and nobody else knows, but don't think for 1 second that you have escaped this, right? The problem is that we start to build this false security because nothing happened. Joshua 7, 20, 21. Who knows the background of this story? Right? Everybody knows? Okay. Here, the Israel army has just won, brought victory. God says, listen, all the first spoils, all these things, they're all mine. Okay? Achan, something took place in his life, right? Indeed, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and this is what I have done. When I saw amongst the spoils beautiful garments, golds, and riches, he completely lost sight of the fear of God. Right? It was, God said, don't touch. Right? And we think the slap on our wrist. Right? Don't touch. Achan just who knows how it happened, right? In my brain, he kind of went in and he picked it up and nothing happens. Picked up another thing, maybe. Great. Just grabbed a whole bunch of things. No one's looking. No one saw. Went and buried it, and that was it. Right? He lost in that moment. God, your eyes see everything. And there is no escape from that. Right? God sees who you are and what you do in your heart. Right? Even before the words come out of your mouth, he sees them played out already. Okay? And this is what's happening with Achan in this story. This is what's happened with the children of Israel, is that they had lost something the moment they stopped fearing God's judgments. Listen, you'll lose so much more than you realize when you stop fearing God's judgment and who he is, right? The things that God has made very clear is right and wrong, but because decisions we have taken or not taken, we have brought erosion to our hearts, and it's destroying our fear of God's judgment on our lives. 1 Corinthians 10:12. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands, right, be worried because he's going to fall, right? Just because there is no judgment, just because, the repercussions didn't happen the way that you thought they were going to happen, doesn't mean that they're not happening. Because the erosion has already started taking place. And that is a horrible thing to have take place, right? I think what upset me personally, Phineas, so much is that he saw the sin take place, right? It wasn't he He's watching this play out. He's watching them camp. They're going. He's watching them leave and commit idolatry and fornication. He's watching his brethren fall and die. He's seeing all this take place, right? And it's upsetting to him, right? It's bothering him, right? Something is stirring. So let's ask a serious question in this place. Does sin bother you? In reality, does sin bother you enough to stir you to go take action? To you to be able to go into a tent, grab a javelin, and say, no longer is this going to take part of my life, my family, my job. Dead. Does it? Or is it, that's just the way the world works. That's erosion has taken place, a sensitivity on God's judgment. Listen, do you not care enough about somebody else to see that they are going to die and go to hell for you not to go up and say, listen, tell them about Jesus Christ. I don't want sin to take place in their life anymore. It needs to stop. Right? This is what I believe, my opinion, is this is what's bothering Phineas for him to take this kind of action. He's seen his friends. He's seen his family, right? His loved ones. Who knows who's amongst the 24,000 that he saw that was maybe close to him. He grew up with half of these people, right? They've battled together. They fought side. They linked shields. They've gone to outreaches. They've gone to all these things together. They've gone and witnessed, and yet this is what's taking place amongst them. Okay? When we see this take place, how does it make us feel? Or has it become, like I said, something where it's just life? That's just, they're sinners. They sin. And we accept it. Right? Is that hitting home? Does that make sense? Okay? And so this is what needs to be addressed in this, as Phineas did. And we look at, just real quickly, is that we need to rise to the call, as Phineas did in this place. Okay? In our story, Phineas, he reached a point where enough is enough. Right? And so I don't know what was, the last straw, and maybe it was this very thing. And maybe that because it was his friends in this, they had gone together, they had brought all the leaders together, and then someone else brings in a Midianite to one of the leaders in this group, and then he goes, that's it, I'm done, right? There is no more, this is got to stop. God is speaking to us right now, and I'm watching sin take place on what God is trying to judge to stop. And that, hey, I'm done, right? How many can that maybe have gotten to that point in our life, right? We've been in battles, and we finally have said, you know what? Enough is enough. I don't want this anymore. I'm surrounded by death. I'm surrounded by defeat, and I'm tired of losing my family. I'm tired of losing my things at the job. I'm tired of not seeing people saved. I'm tired of this. That's enough. It's got to stop, right? Many of us, God is maybe pushing you to the point to come to that. That's enough. You got to make a decision, right? Whose side are you going? Are you going to fight with me or against me? How long are you going to falter and sit on the fence and not recognize enough's enough, right? This is what's happening, right? So my question was, have you got to that point? And then what did you do, right? What did you do about it to say, God, listen, this is what, because I could tell you what Phineas did. Numbers 25:11, Phineas, right? The son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath, right? From the children of Israel. Why? Because he was zealous with my zeal amongst them, right? There is something that Phineas did, is that what he grasped was something that was God's. He grabbed God's zeal. He touched the heart of God, and he said, you know what? I need that. I'm taking this, I'm putting it into me, and I'm going to act on what you've given me, right? I wrote down, there is victory when we get the heart of Christ. When you get the heart of Christ, when it becomes real in your life, there is something that causes a supernatural change and can bring forth victory. That is something that God had commanded, but in all the other groups of people that were there, where was all the other Phinehas's? It was just Phinehas, right? And I thought about this, is that who knows the story, right? It doesn't go into detail, but was Phinehas the fastest one in action? Was there other people maybe ready to grab spears also? I don't know. All I know is Phinehas was the one who did it amongst everybody else, right? He was the first one to do this and take action, right? He made real what God's word was in his life. And he said, listen, it's not just talk anymore. We have to take this to action. And that's where victory comes from, is when it just doesn't become talk in your life anymore, but it becomes something that you actually live, right? And this is what brings great victory. This is what stops the needless deaths that are taking place. This is what makes God so happy, is you got it. What you got my heart. You got the zeal that I have, and you made it your own in your own life, right? And so the question is, in this place, how many of you are tapping into God's characteristics? Because he mentions zeal in this place. Have we asked God for that? God, give me the zeal to do your will, to do your bidding, to be able to stand, to be able to say no, to be able to travel upstream when everybody else is against me, and do it with such a passion and joy on my face that people look at me like, you're crazy. How can you do that? Right? As Pastor Glenn Cluck, he once said, he goes, you smile all the time like you brush your teeth with preparation H, right? Is that there's something that people, you're crazy. How can you, listen, because that's what really people are looking for. They're looking for someone who stands, who's not just constantly falling to everything that's going on around them. We have too many of those people. You stand over here and all of a sudden they collapse, and then they're trying to stand over here, and then they just collapse. They want someone who is able to stand strong. And that's what we're building our life on, right? We're building our life on the rock, the thing that does not move, the thing that's everlasting in this place, right? You look at what ends up happening is when we stand, is Daniel 3:23-25. Here's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And in this story, what takes place is that it's a call out, right? If you don't stand, or if you don't kneel when you're supposed to kneel, to bow your heads to this false god, then death is going to be your penalty. How many know that sounds awfully familiar in the world that we live in today, right? If you say that you love Christ and you're a Christian, you do this, listen, there's persecution, right? It might not be death, but there's things that take place in your family, takes place in your job, where it brings a certain death to things that you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you know that to be true, okay? And here, he says, listen, if you guys do this, right, if you stand, then I'm going to let you know that you're going to get tossed into the fire, right? And that's exactly what takes place. The music plays, everybody else around them who claim to maybe be Christians or, said they followed Christ. It was only Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who stood. Listen, all the fence sitters, they kneeled down, right? All those who didn't want to die, they kneeled down. How many know sometimes we're going to place ourselves in hard situations? Okay? This is not an easy place to be. Listen, if you don't bow down, you're going to get barbecued. I don't know how to explain this to you, but this is what's going to happen. It sounds like a great idea. I love barbecues. What are we eating? Right? That's not. How many know we can look through the history of the Bible? We can just look at all the disciples, all 12, right? Were persecuted. 11 of them lost their lives, right? Whether they were eaten by lions, killed by gladiators, drawn and quartered, boiled, burned, hung on crosses upside down, whatever it may have been at that time, right? They made a stand. This is what we believe in. This is what's going to happen. Why? Because they grasped something that brought victory that no one could remove. Listen, we're going to go through things in life, but there is a joy and victory when we make a decision to say, you know what, God, no matter what, I'm going to follow you, right? No matter the outcome. And praise God, you look at this story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't know the outcome, right? They didn't, hey, we're going to die. That's what they thought. God's going to save us or he's not going to save us, right? Either way, we're going to do what's right. That's the attitude, right? That attitude enough, that zeal enough, I believe in my heart, is going to set you apart. I don't care what the world thinks. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what's right in my home. I'm going to do it right with my family. I'm going to do what's right with my job. I don't care because the person who matters the most to me is Christ. And that's what took place in this story, right? They were called out as many times as we're called out, right? They were not guaranteed an outcome of this scenario, right? They could have been burned. They could have died. Like, listen, we don't know the outcome, right? It'd be so great if I could have the cliff notes of, the life of Dom. Oh, sweet. Okay, I make it out of this one, right? And then I can go and just, yeah, with a little bit more gusto, right? Because that's not how it works. I love it, but it's not, right? We enter into battles not knowing the outcome, right? There's no guarantee on the outcome. But there is a guarantee that we have is in Jesus Christ and what he's going to do for us, right? When we step into eternity, those words, good and faithful servant, good and faithful soldier, thank you for standing up. Thank you for doing what was right. Enter in, right? That should be a reward enough. But even more so in this story, right, you go through, right? I thought we only threw 3 of them in there. Wasn't it only 3? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If it would have been Titus, it would have been Why is there 4? Who's this 4th person? Right? James 4:17. Whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him is sin. But in Deuteronomy, it says in 31:8, and the Lord, he is the one who goes before you. He'll be with you. He will not leave you, nor he will forsake you. Do not fear, nor be dismayed. Do not fall. Be able to stand. Listen, when they stood there, their outcome they did not know. The outcome of the situation they did not know, right? What ended up happening? What ended up happening is when they came out of the furnace. Who could tell me? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They came out. What happened when they came out? Everybody bowed down to God. Did they know that was going to happen? No. God could turn any crazy scenario in our life to one of tremendous victory, right? In our family, listen, it was the guy forget God. I'm the God. That's what we worship. And 2 seconds later is like, oh my gosh, you're God. That quickly. God can change things in our life to the better. God can change from what it looks like a tremendous loss, a place of turmoil and defeat, to a place of great victory, right? Why? God has never left you guys, right? Here, what ended up happening with Phineas is as God is speaking, there was an impartation of his words that entered into Phineas's life, right? It came and he grasped that. He loved Christ. He loved God, everything about him, to the point it became real in his life for him to say no to sin and yes to victory. So how many people want to live in this place? Thank you for the 3 of you guys. The rest we'll see you after church. Right? So we want life in this place, right? Listen, the crowd is in the back is just like at the gladiators, right? And they're all kind of all pointing to us, right? Is that not a real thing? Do we not live in that world today? How many likes do I have? How many not likes? Do we not live in that world today? It hasn't gone too far, right? Now it's just digital thumb going up and down, right? But that's what's ended up happening, right? And when Phineas did this, boom, there was life. The moment sin died, God brought victory to their life. And in this place, that's the very thing that could happen to you, is that the moment we decide, listen, this erosion needs to stop, needs to be addressed, this drip by drip that's been allowed into my life, that needs to be repaired, it needs to be mended, and God, listen, it's yes. I want to accept everything about you, your characteristics. God, make that who I am too. Give me that zeal, give me that passion in this place. I was thinking about that story as I closed. Here, this man, Lenny Skudnick, right? Do you know even 30, 40, 50 years later, there is a Skudnick Day, Jenny Skudnick, to memorialize this hero. He received a medal, and there was a blessing that came over his life. But even more so, the woman that he saved had a family, had kids, and had a future. Listen, your decision in this place to say no is going to bring somebody else life and a future. If nothing else matters to you, that needs to. Because you're bringing something that the world is trying to strip away. You're bringing someone life and a future. Just look at your own self in this place. Where would I have been if someone didn't come and rescue me? If someone didn't say no, right? Well, I know where I would have been, right? And many of you know where you would have been. But someone said yes to God and said, you know what? No to sin. That's all.